Hey guys, this is Cade Lamb with Fear Not Do Right, and this is the Fear Not Do Right podcast. I got a couple of really special guests with me today. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Cool.
Sure, I'm Catherine Engelbrecht. I'm the founder of True the Vote.
And Greg Phillips. I run a election intelligence research company, OPSEC.
See, I've heard OPSEC a lot in the last 5 years. I just got out of the Army, and so OPSEC's kind of been a big deal. So, tell me about True the Vote. You guys have kind of done made some waves.
Yeah,
to say
we've
the
made
least.
some waves over the last 12 years. I started in 2010.
Okay.
I was never intending to really start anything. It was an effort to go and find volunteers to work in polls. And when we had that first experience, we saw problems that led to questions about why those problems were there, why the processes were broken. And over the years, we continued to peel back the layers, trying to understand why we're not doing better. And that has led us all the way up to 2020, when things really just went off the rails under the fog of COVID. We saw laws changed coast to coast. And we believe that there were exposures, there were vulnerabilities in the process that we could use tech and data to measure. And that went on to become a movie, and Greg led the research effort and did an amazing job.
That's awesome. So I kind of, I tried to do a little bit of research here. Now, how did you get started doing all of this? I mean, as I understand it, just kind of a parent out in Texas.
That's
and
it.
Then
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a call. I answered a call that was put on my heart, and it made not a lick bit of sense at the time. I was never political. I was not involved in, never then nor now do I want to run for anything. It was just, what can we do? It seemed like to me at the time, this was now in 2009, that it seemed like everywhere I turned, government was encroaching closer and closer into my business, into my parents' health care, into my children's school, into our church. And I felt like, where does all that start? Well, it starts with the vote. So what can we do to make sure that process is secured? And I learned that there were not enough volunteers. And from there, the journey began and continues, to this day.
That's awesome. Now, Greg, how did you get started at OPSEC? You've been doing this quite a long time.
Yeah, I've been doing this for about 40 years. So probably long before you were born, right?
I don't even think I was a twinkling in my dad's eye back then.
Right. But, the world's changed a lot, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the cheating's always been there, whether it's in the United States or elsewhere. But these days, with the sort of the newer technologies and all of the things that we have access to, we can come in and do things today that we couldn't even have thought of even 5 years ago. And now it allows us all sorts of opportunities to gather open source intelligence, geointelligence, signal intelligence. I mean, it brings in different facets of the intelligence world that civilians have never had access to. But today it's off the shelf. Lots of it is open source, and we have the ability to track folks and find the bad guys.
So, in your background, was it a little bit kind of separate from what True the Vote is doing now with some of the tech that you're using?
Yeah, we actually met. Catherine was sort of famous for having been targeted by the Obama administration, the IRS, and the ATF, and the FBI, and everybody showed up at her house, and over a 2-year period had 23 different audits and all these things going on. We had a mutual friend. I was at an event in Aspen, and he said, "Hey, you need to meet this lady in Houston. She's going through some of the same things you are." I had no idea, and then I go call on her, and I'm like, "Dude, she's way past me. I mean, these people are trying to kill her or disappear her or something." But we kind of hit it off and started doing some tech deals together. She was working on some projects that we had a little bit of skill in, and it turned out that they weren't just complementary, but there were some true synergies, and so we've been working on different things through the years. This particular one is just something that we knew something was going on, right? It's like Aaron Lewis's song, you know, everybody in America is shaking their head saying something ain't right. And that's what she said. And you know, we got together and she said, let's go. And we jumped in and went all in, and here we are today.
That's amazing. So this kind of really, you guys kind of hit the, I guess the marquee, quite literally, with this new project with Dinesh D'Souza. You guys want to talk about that? How did that get started?
Well, it got started because after, well, let me think about this. God, the years run together now. After about a year of trying to advance our work through the corporate media and through law enforcement, it was proving to be difficult, if not impossible, to get any real momentum. There was such a, I mean, come on, for the last year we've heard nothing but this was the safest, most secure election in history. Right. And it simply wasn't. But to break through that narrative, I mean, there was such a significant investment by the media and by the power elite to keep the line that this was a secure election and never to question. And in fact, if you did question, you could be looking forward to being canceled off all manner of social media and your voice silenced. And so once we got to a point in our project where we knew we had a complete story, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and we started out first with the cell phone data that allowed us to see patterns, and then we're able to complement that with video from certain jurisdictions. It had all the makings of a movie. And so we reached out to Dinesh and said, look, we want to be able to tell this story to America. They need to see what was really happening. And that's what we did.
So I just watched the film, and it blew my mind. Especially, so I've been pretty removed from a lot of media, a lot of news the last few years, in the sense that I haven't been around to experience it. I've been seeing the headlines, but I haven't been directly impacted. So when all this election stuff was going down, I was in Erbil, Iraq, and then I was down in Kuwait as well when all of this was going down. So we just kind of had to watch and see. We were hearing all the headlines, right, this is the safest and best election, and the blah 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 blah.
Right.
So what has been the outcome since you guys did the film with Dinesh, 2,000 Mules?
Man, it has been completely insane. Go. First of all, you guys that served and the things that you folks do are so amazing, and the very idea that this country is less secure in our elections than they were in Iraq or they were in Kuwait is frightening. I mean, how could that possibly be, right? But here we are. But it's been a whirlwind, to say the least. I mean, one of the hard things for me personally is, I get to sit next to her every day on these interviews and on mics, and, she's as eloquent as she is and kind of a leader in the movement. And I'm sort of this technology geek guy who, spends a lot of time in the data. But this particular project was so important for Catherine to be able to bring people together, right? I think one of the great things about the movie is maybe no time that I've been around, but I've never seen people come together like they have. Everybody, whether Republicans, Democrats,
not
it doesn't
about
matter.
party. It is not about
people
party.
are reacting just like you just said. Oh man, I'm just blown away by this, right? And we in turn have been blown away by the people's response. I think they were expecting a couple million people to see the movie, and I guess it's up over 22 million now or something
Wow.
like that. So, and everywhere we go, I mean, people are, talking about the movie, and it's elicited conversation. We've had all sorts of people come in, well, this happened to us, or this happened to me. We were in Philadelphia yesterday, listening to a great patriot citizen group that just came together with they have an incredible story. It's still coming together. But these are just people, just regular folks, right? I mean, one of the guys was unemployed. Another one was a stay-at-home mom homeschooling her kids. And we've just been, I personally have been completely blown away by the hundreds of thousands of people that are reaching out to us, that are trying to communicate with us, that are just doing this on their own. I mean, it's enabled a whole new generation of activists, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we did the movie, but it opened the door to conversations and connections that are going to save this country.
Yeah.
The movie resonated because it's true, and people recognized maybe some of their own experiences, things that we haven't been able to talk about, and the fact that it has been so clearly and overtly silenced as a subject for the last 2 years makes people wonder all the more, what are they trying to cover up? Why can't we just get to the bottom of what was or wasn't really going on? And so I think that what we're seeing is Americans coming together and saying enough is enough. We are going to retake the field. We're going to find our way back to honest elections. And I think through that process, we're going to find ourselves part of a unification of the country that we would have never dared imagine. So it's really, really exciting.
So for the troglodytes like me that are going to listen to this podcast, what was it that you guys found? What was so important that this 2000 Mules film was made?
Well, the way it started for us was really very simply. We had an election integrity hotline, and Greg's team was working the hotline or overseeing the hotline for calls that came in that seemed like there was something there that really needed to be checked out. And this was late September, early October of 2020. So as calls started to come in, certain of them had a very similar message that there was vote harvesting that was occurring. And of course, it all made sense, because what happened in 2020, unlike anything we'd ever seen before, was the rapid expansion of mass mail-out of ballots that were being sent based upon inaccurate voter rolls. And then late in the game, we saw the sudden appearance of these privately funded drop boxes. And the drop boxes are where people were going to go and put their ballots and not be nearly as well observed as they would have been had they gone into mailboxes. So these are the things that we were observing and realizing there's something's not right with this equation.
So privately funded is in I could have paid for a drop box.
Well, you could have, but the person that did it was Mark Zuckerberg, a billionaire, who funded an organization that prior to 2020 had been just a very small nonprofit organization called CTCL, and he and Mark and his wife put through a little over $400 million into the funding of grants directly to counties that seem to have a very pronounced bias to just true bias towards the Democrat Party, and they put in all kinds of expenditures that had ranging from personal protection equipment and gear for COVID, but more than anything, as far as we were concerned, it was these funding of these drop boxes. And it begs the question, right? If we're all staying in our homes sequestered because of COVID, why would we put out drop boxes that would require us and not use the mail? Why would we create this new and unchecked, unproven variable into an equation that was already unstable, because there were so many changes that had happened in elections over the past year? And so our thought was, if there was going to be cheating, it might be a good place to observe whether or not those vulnerabilities were going to be exploited. So you had dirty voter rolls that were being used to address to the mass mail out of ballots. Those mass mail out ballots finding their ways to those drop boxes. Were there, in fact, ballot harvesters, and we began to call them ballot mules, that were out there exploiting that vulnerability? And so that's really, I think, when Greg and his team, kind of put their heads together and said, well, what can we do to prove this out? And began to put together a plan that included the use of geospatial data or cell phone data to track people and determine whether or not, in fact, they were really exploiting those boxes.
So all the apps on your phone, there's 360,000 or so apps that have these things called SDKs, software development kits, that are built into the app. So, and they regularly emit signals. So depending on how active the app is, it might emit more or less. So like your weather app and that kind of thing, that's how it knows where you are, right? It's emitting these signals. Or if you're in Iraq and your phone rang, surely you guys have better tech than that. But if you're in Iraq and your
we didn't.
right, and your phone rang, how did it know you were there, right?
Right.
Because your phone's emitting a signal saying, "Hey, I'm here. Send whatever I need here." So those are two different types of technologies, but those are the kind of things that are collected every day, and they're collected in the billions and billions of these signals every day. So we went out and bought 10 trillion of those signals in Atlanta, Maricopa County, Milwaukee County, or in Milwaukee, Wayne County, Detroit, Michigan, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And really what we did was we geo-fenced around the drop boxes. So if the drop box is here in the middle, we just geo-fence around it. And anytime a phone came inside and a signal went off, if it got right here and the signal went off, in and out, we wouldn't count that. Only when the signal was in the circle, right? And so to kind of narrow it down, we started out with hundreds of thousands of devices that came near those drop boxes. So what we decided to do was, hey, we got to slim this down. So it was people who came inside of the circle 10 or more times during this 2-week period or during early voting.
Okay.
But they also, even more important than that, they also had to go over to one of the stash houses, one of the places where the ballots were being collected. So it wasn't good enough just grandma out walking her dog by the ballot drop box, and, the dog pissing on the drop box,
right,
and she gets caught. It's not that. She also had to go to this drop box or this stash house 5 or more times. So the statistical possibility of even one mule going to the same crime scene 10 times and to an adjacent scene 5 times, it's statistically nil. I mean, it nears zero very quickly.
Right.
But if you consider that 242 just in Atlanta, 202 in Maricopa, and 2,000 across the country fit that criteria, and the average was shocking. The average was over 30 times that they went inside the circle and went to these orgs, another 8 or 9 times. And so you can't, for the media and everybody else is saying, oh, you can't, that's not even smart. You can't do that. Or you can't tell if a signal's across the street. Let me tell you something. Military intelligence and your spotters and everybody else know exactly how to use this tech, and they can get it down to 2 centimeters. They can get it down to, they can measure velocity by the distance between the signals if it's moving in a certain direction. The very idea that the media continues to say, oh, it just can't be that accurate. First thing, what they're actually talking about, you hear back in the old days, you used to hear about triangulation around cell towers.
Right, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's not really that accurate, but that's also not what we do, right? These phones are giving off a signal that is imprinted with the lat long, the horizontal, as well as a timestamp, so the temporal side. So there's 4 key components to every stamp on every signal. Are there those that come across bad? Do we have to clean them up? Sure. But we have highly curated sites that have already cleaned up these signals. These are that we buy from. These brokers are the best of the best in the world. Every major agency in the United States uses it. Tonight there's going to be this January 6th thing on television, and they're going to say all these people came in and all of this happened. Well, the reason they know that is because they use this technology.
Right. So when you say you're buying this information, that's from companies like AT&T, Verizon, or Apple?
It's from well, you can probably explain it, but it's from the apps, but I want to make sure everybody hears loud and clear. It's commercially available. This is available and is bought and sold about all of us all day, every day. It is commercially available. It's a huge market, and it informs all manner of things, as Greg said, from military intelligence and law enforcement to Starbucks knowing that you're in their parking lot so they can give you a coupon.
Now, when these mules were traveling around, going in and out of those circles, were you guys able to identify what exactly these stash houses were? Like, who were aiding and abetting these mules?
Well, we haven't named many of them. A few of them are starting to come out now because there's some law enforcement activity inside the
In Arizona.
So they're coming out, but the hotline was generating all sorts of information for us, right? People that were saying, I saw somebody coming out with a backpack, and I did this, and I saw this, and I was there, I participated. So we amalgamated all of that information and really started whittling it down. Atlanta's always on my mind just because it was first. But we started out with, I think, maybe 30 or more of these of these stash houses that we were looking at. We ultimately got it down to about 9 or 10. But we started with the 30 reports that these different groups had been going on.
And the only reason we got it down is because that's what the data showed. I mean, we could have, this could have just been a huge bust. I mean, the data may not have shown any nexus between organizations and drop boxes, but that's not what we found.
And then the icing on the cake, or as I've been saying, kind of the silver bullet is when we have quality video that shows not only that you're in that circle, but I got you on video.
Now, tell me about the video that you guys got. It was pretty shocking.
Some of it is shockingly bad.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest shock to what we know is that most of it is just garbage
or missing.
And you know, the average American believes that those drop boxes had some manner of security or surveillance. And what was given as guidance from the federal government was that all these drop boxes should have video surveillance.
The one that we got here in Maricopa County was hilarious, right?
Yeah.
It was from about maybe 150 feet away. So it's up on a building. The drop box is way over there, 150 feet away, and there was a
tarp,
a tent or a tarp. So you couldn't see that. You could see people walking up to it,
you couldn't see a doggone thing,
but you couldn't see anything, right?
And it's good enough for government work, right?
There you go.
And that's the only box that had video on.
In Maricopa County.
That's it. That was it. So that's what makes these cell phone pings so important as a predicate to investigation, because the video wasn't there, which is another reason we should be looking at this. Why wasn't the video there?
So think about that scenario I just drew. We also saw people walking out of the parking lot behind the tarp, voting or presumably voting or going to the drop box and then leaving, even though we couldn't see them. The pings could see them though, right? So the ping would see them getting out of their car, going up to the drop box, and then leaving. The other thing about that particular one was it was supposed to be a drive-through, right? And it wasn't a drive-through. It was drive up, sort of, right? But anyway, it's crazy. Well, we have some incredible video though. I mean, we have goofy video, things you wouldn't even think about. We have this one dude in Atlanta was like hiding he had to go in this government building, and so you see him looking all around, waiting on everybody to leave, and he takes his drug stash and stuffs it behind the drop box. I mean, so these drop boxes were used for all kinds of things, not just grandma's dog, but also voting, cheating, and drug stashing.
But one of the big takeaways that we felt like should have been clear through the movie is drop boxes are not a good idea. It is not a secure way to cast your vote. And to the extent that you believe government or anybody with good intent is watching that drop box and making sure your vote is safe, you're wrong. It's not happening. And they need to go. It is not an effective, efficient, secure way to conduct an election.
Now, as these false ballots were coming in, was it you guys kind of noticed a trend, and it was primarily from leftist affiliates, all Democratic Party associated. Did you guys find anything from any Republican Party candidates?
Well, there are states that have North Carolina, as you see in the movie, where a Republican candidate was caught up in a ballot harvesting scandal. So I want to be real clear. The way that our data worked out, it is true that the nonprofits would tend to be identified as left-leaning, but the right does not get off the hook with this. everybody that is part of the body politic, that knows that our elections are broken and are using it as a political football to fundraise and saber rattle, they should all be held accountable. Elections are not meant to be perpetually broken, and that's what we allow to have happen in this country because it's a good soundbite.
Mm-hmm.
So we think both parties are just as culpable, maybe in different ways, but nonetheless.
Now, I wrote down some numbers just because, as I was watching this 2,000 Mules, it just blew my mind. So for those that are watching this podcast, listening, and you haven't seen 2,000 Mules, I highly recommend it. These guys are great on there. But overall, and correct me on any of these if I get them wrong, you guys are the subject matter experts here, but it was 2,000 mules across the country, averaging 38 drop boxes, 5 ballots per drop box, for a total of 380,000 false votes. Is that correct?
Just in those 5 communities that we looked.
Just in those 5 communities, and those 5 communities being Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania.
Well, just jurisdictions, not the whole state, just jurisdictions within those states.
So Maricopa,
okay.
or let's just say Phoenix, Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Atlanta.
Wow. Now, when I went through these numbers, Philly kind of stood out. What was your reaction when you guys saw those numbers for Philly?
Shock, sadness. It's a kind of a combination of a lot of things. To me, to see the data, to see the pings move back and forth across the New Jersey Bridge, coming into Philly and then out, going to drop boxes, particularly clear in my mind about the abuse that was happening there.
We were looking at this back in as soon as the election was over. There were some obvious anomalies up there, and we just couldn't figure it out. And so one of the things we were trying to do initially was we were really trying to verify identity of people that had moved out of the state but still voting in Philadelphia. And we started off with a number like 29,000. By the time we were able to verify identity, it was down to 20,000. But that's 20,000 in Philadelphia that voted that don't live there anymore. And that got our antennas up. So we knew something was going on.
Because when you push out, again, mass mail ballots, bad rotor rolls, mass mail ballots, you have ballots coming to addresses where, or maybe not coming to those addresses, maybe never even making it to the intended address, even if it was wrong, it's in play. That's a live ballot that's in play where a voter is not going to be present to cast it.
I think people that live in Philadelphia are like, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. We haven't met anybody that say,
that's
terrible.
right.
That's not happening in Philadelphia. I think people are like, yeah, it's happening a lot.
Yeah, for reference, the numbers in Philly were 1,100 mules, 50 drop boxes per mule, averaging 5 ballots per drop box for a total of 275,000 false votes.
In Philadelphia alone.
Just in Philadelphia. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, based off the numbers that you guys got in Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Philadelphia, have you guys done any projections as to what that would look like across the country? Or
yeah, it's similar enough in those areas where we're able to make this, and we had a big enough sample because that's a lot of votes. We believe that approximately, and a little bit of this is an extrapolation, but approximately 7% of the mail-in votes, and this is very conservative in our opinion, approximately 7% of the mail-in votes in the country are problematic. And part of it's because the voter rolls are dirty, right? Part of it's because they mailed out all these applications and mailed out all these ballots.
Or put them in play. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Put them in play.
And then the rest of it's just, just complete and utter breakdown of process in the elections. But we have no doubt that the number's around 7%, which puts the number of ballots in play at about 4.8 million.
Wow. Now, this obviously did not just happen by chance. What kind of orchestration is needed to pull something like this off?
Well, we see a couple of different organizational structures. I like to kind of call it old money and new money. You have new money that we saw in places like Atlanta that are not as entrenched in the community. They're going in, they're recruiting, they're using churches as a backdrop oftentimes. But it's a different vibe than the what I call old money, and you see that here in Arizona, where you have a completely integrated vertical in vulnerable communities, in low-income housing communities, where the controlling entities are locally elected officials. It's imperative that they keep those local positions in order to fund their vertical grift, which includes getting grant monies from the government to build housing, controlling the contractors, controlling the banks, controlling the government programs that are made available in those communities. And so it exploits the most vulnerable of our voters, and it just amounts to abuse. That kind of entrenched control of an entire community, and the requirement of submitting your ballot into that. We have this in the movie, but I mean, submitting your ballot open, bringing it oftentimes to whomever you're told to. You don't even have a choice. Or people come to your door and get your ballot. You don't even have a choice. And that, even though we found that here first in Arizona, is echoed across the country similarly. And that's a long established organizational pattern that's been in this country since the 40s, and has since that time expanded not just all over our country but internationally. We talk about a real pandemic, a real epidemic. It is this type of voter abuse that has been afforded to just get out of control because of the breakdown of process that our government's not doing anything about.
Now, I can't even post on Facebook without Mark Zuckerberg coming down my neck and just being hey, you can't say that. What kind of backlash have you guys seen from this? This is no small matter. So I can't imagine, you haven't been getting any phone calls from Hillary Clinton or anything like that?
They don't call you first.
Yeah, we've been canceled on everything.
That was before, so it was kind of easy. We didn't, we were pretty well deplatformed everywhere already. So
we had to start over. We're on True Social now. Catherine's doing some stuff on Rumble.
Rumble is a good safe platform. Locals is does not censor. So
everything else we've been canceled on. The day the movie came out, they canceled Mississippi State University canceled our lease in our building where we accessed it. It was in a complex that had 3 or 4 data centers in it. We accessed one of the data centers from our office, and they canceled the lease that day.
Yeah, the pushback from the press is deeply invested in holding this myth that this was a safe and secure election. They cannot backpedal on the notion that everybody that questions the election is in fact a big lie. It's all a big lie, right? So they have been relentless in their attempts to discredit us. I mean, I've been doing this 12 years. You've been doing it longer, so you've seen more for sure. But I mean, for me, I have never seen articles written with such absolute disregard for fact, disregard for written with just sort of malice dripping from their fingers.
Venom, hate.
It's
bad.
Amazingly dishonest. It's so dishonest that when you know what the truth is and you read these articles, I mean, it is an all-out corporate media cover-up.
Yeah, I said it in the Arizona legislature when we went down and testified. These are journalistic terrorists.
Absolutely, journalistic terrorists. Absolutely,
they're seeking to destroy us.
Yeah, I love how you guys have used language in your approach. We always say in the military all the time, especially when some guys being dumb. Words mean things.
Yeah.
And journalistic terrorists, 2,000 mules, like that's very powerful language. So since you guys have been deplatformed and canceled on everything, how have you been getting your message out there? I know you guys have the movie, but what's your course of action right now?
Well, we had an awful lot of people come to our website, so we have a pretty robust file of individuals that have already connected with us that way. locals and Rumble for me. Greg's doing a lot on Truth Social. I'm not as much into the social media. I've been burned so hard so many times, but Greg's doing a great job out there getting the word out. And people are spreading it. I mean, people are telling other people, and it's sort of this like a perpetual motion story. People continue to tell the story, and so forth and so forth and so forth. It's going around the world. It's amazing.
We've done dozens and dozens of podcasts like yours, and I mean, Catherine, you've probably done 50 or more.
Oh,
I think I've probably
absolutely.
done
But I mean,
close.
there's so many people out there that that are talking about it. I mean, just talking about it amongst themselves, talking about it on their own podcast, and like I said, coming from around the world. It was shown in the EU in Brussels a couple weeks ago and debated.
Really?
Yeah.
We're getting calls from Israel, from Italy. I mean, it's completely insane.
The
Meals
president
has taken the world
The
by
president
storm.
That's
of
amazing.
Brazil is coming this week, I believe, to visit with Biden. And he's quoted as saying, well, I don't even really know if he was legitimately elected. I mean, that's a lot coming from a world leader, right?
Coming from Brazil.
Right.
We know they're the most integrally secure country out there. So what's the course of action moving forward with you guys? We kind of have uncovered this. You've uncovered this whole big thing. What now?
Well, the thing that I am most excited about relative to this project is something that Greg and I have taken to calling pulling the ripcord. We want to turn all of this video and the data that we can, turn it loose to the public. Let them see just how broken the process is. We have millions and millions of minutes of video, and although we've tried to go through it as best as we can based upon the cell phone pings that we've been able to timestamp, or that we've been able to match up with timestamps, we just scratched the surface. So there's a lot more stories to be told in the video, in the open records. Turning all that public is our next big step, and we think that's going to usher in an entirely new wave of awareness.
And the other two big things we have going on, Catherine had the idea of pulling together a bunch of influencers, whether they be folks in social media, wherever they are, maybe law enforcement, maybe some political folks, maybe whatever, pull them into kind of a smallish kind of a group and turn over a bunch of new information we have. We have some really, really heavy stuff that needs to get out there.
Not meals related,
Not
but much bigger.
But we're going to drop that out into the space, probably in a meeting. Catherine started loosely calling it the pit. So get everybody together in the pit, and let's get all this stuff out there, and let America go slug it out with the bad guys. That's coming, and then the work with Sheriff Lamb.
What brings us here today, we are thrilled about the partnership with Protect America Now and Sheriff Lamb, and the opportunity to work with sheriffs across the country. People are so fed up, and fed up's not even the right word. They're just disillusioned with the whole process relative to elections. Because where's law enforcement in any of this? Things are going sideways. Where is our law enforcement? And Greg and I learned the hard way when we first started in our effort to get our work into the hands of law enforcement. We started at the federal level, and then we moved to the state level, and it's all so politicized and weaponized against the citizen. And so our happenstance meeting with Sheriff Lamb, and I had no idea how much power sheriffs have.
Nobody really does.
Yeah.
It's
wild.
It's amazing. And so we think this is going to be a groundswell across the country of citizens going, okay, this is how we can do this. This is how we can take our country back locally, working together with our sheriffs, citizens going to volunteer to work in elections and making sure they get out and vote, and sheriffs and local law enforcement helping to make sure that those election laws are being upheld. And that takes a lot of the political sting out of it, and we believe it's going to mark a whole new day in election integrity.
So we're putting together sort of, think of it may not be a command center, but think of that sort of concept where citizens will be able to come in. We'll have open source researchers. We'll be pulling in geo information, maybe some surveillance data. We're going to be working on getting some equipment in the hands of some of these sheriffs.
Where drop boxes are, let's get some cameras on that offer near real time looks, and not looks 22 months later. when a citizen group starts trying to figure it out.
And that way, Catherine and Sheriff Lamb are packaging it in something that they agree is actionable, and we get it out to these sheriffs in real time.
Yeah, from what it sounds like, I got game cams out in the desert right now tracking coyotes.
There you go.
Better than most of these drop boxes.
Yeah.
Which is ironic that it's tracking coyotes, same kind of concept here
Yeah.
with these mules. So what does the average American need to do? The whole idea with the Fear Not Do Right podcast is providing practical, kinetic solutions, because this is a problem that, I'm not going to lie, intimidates the hell out of me. Right? I'm like, oh my gosh, if the system is this broken, what can I personally do about that? So what would you recommend to the Americans at home? What can they do to attack this problem head on?
Well, I would first of all repeat the name of your podcast, Fear Not. Fear Not and Do Right. Look, there's a lot of things that are broken, but Americans working together can right any ship. We need to evaluate what's broken. We need to fix it. We need to do it locally. We need to do it independently, and we need to not wait. What that might look like for the average citizen who's just saying, okay, where do I start? There is, in almost every community in the country, there is a deficit of volunteers working at the polls. Having honest eyes and ears and hearts and minds working in those polls, that observation changes things. Mm-hmm. So being engaged, and the way you do that is reaching out to the party or candidate of your choice or to your county and just saying, I want to work. Put me in. What can I do? And don't take no for an answer. Figure out. And every state handles it differently. And because it's been, in many communities, it's been an awful long time since citizens have really shown up in any great measure, sometimes you need to re-grease those skids to understand how to actually get volunteers in.
And go to truethevote.org, sign up. We're going to have all these new initiatives, working with Sheriff Lamb, working through all the other opportunities there are.
Right. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that's going to be coming up, and truethevote.org will be a place for people to go and connect and see what's new. Look, I'm very optimistic. Things are bad, mm-hmm. but we're going to work our way out of this.
There you go. So the best way to kind of see what you guys are doing and see what True the Vote is doing is at your website, truethevote.com.
Go to truethevote.org or join me every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for 30 minutes or an hour. We just sit around and talk about what's up, answer questions, and it's really developing into a really engaged community of people who are concerned.
And this is on your website?
You can link to it on the website. It's on a platform called Locals, which is like a Rumble thing.
Okay.
But
and when we pull that ripcord and we get we get into the pit, it's going to be completely game on.
Well, I mean, if you can, anybody who knows me knows that I'm down for a good fight.
Let's do it.
Now, before I let you guys go and get to your next thing, I always like to ask how you like your steak done. I'm a big steak guy. I cook a lot of steaks. How do you like your steak done? You're a Texas gal. You probably got it dialed in.
I'm medium rare.
Medium rare?
Yeah, mine's medium.
Medium?
Yeah.
Any specific cut?
Oh, these days, if I can do it, Wagyu steak is like my new thing,
man.
She's
bougie.
Give me a tomahawk, and as long as I'm hungry.
Okay, there we go. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on with me, especially such short notice. This is
bro.
Such an amazing thing that you guys are doing. Americans need to hear this. This needs to get out there. And I appreciate everything that you guys do.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.